U.S., Senator Marco Rubio attempting to fight economic pessimism with a new growth agenda. He unveiled this at the Kemp Foundation event today, co-sponsored by Google. Senator Rubio joins us live now. As always, Senator Rubio, it's great to see you. You know, Jack Kemp was a mentor of mine. He was a great friend of mine. I mean, going back to the mid and late 1970s. Right. He was for growth, opportunity, incentives. Right now, Senator, all I hear, inequality, stagnation, pessimism, defeatism, punishing success. How can you turn this around? Because in some sense, turning this around can turn America around.
Thanks for having me on tonight. I think that that's exactly the point. My argument is that we're actually on the verge of a new American century. So much of what's happening around the world is of such tremendous benefit, but there's some things we're going to have to do to get that right. It's within our reach, but we're going to have to change our laws, and we're going to have to change our tax code, and we're going to have to change a number of regulations that we have so that we can encourage innovation, investment, and expanding access to markets. If we do that, America is uniquely positioned in the 21st century. If we fail to do that, then I think we're going to pay a huge opportunity cost price in terms of opportunities that we're going to lose out on.
See, that's the thing. It's almost, Senator, it's a policy issue, and I want to talk about your specifics. You've got a great list of specifics here in a minute. But it's like a psychological issue. That's the thing. It's like we've been engulfed in this pessimism. Instead of can do, it's all about we can't do. Later in the program, I have ace pollster John McLaughlin coming on, who's going to tell us, among other things, that running on Obamacare is not enough for the Republican Party. There has to be a growth message. There has to be a middle-class jobs message. There has to be a take-home pay message. Is that what you're angling for? Can you be specific with us?
Sure. First of all, let me just say that I would ask people, if they are negative about things, I would just say, look, we do have some very serious problems, but which country would you trade places with? I mean, there are probably elements of other countries that we would want to have, but what country would you swap for ours? And I think the answer, of course, is there isn't one. So we still have many of the things in place that we need to succeed. We do, however, have a tax code, for example, that makes America increasingly expensive to invest in. We do have regulations that are standing in the way of the sorts of innovation that we need, and that's why I've argued not just for a national regulatory budget, which basically says that every year you have to set a budgetary amount of how much regulations should be allowed to cost the economy. And then every year you'd have to estimate how much the actual proposed regulations are costing. And if it's over that budgeted amount, you've got to reduce regulation to get underneath it. Beyond that, I would say that our tax code, particularly on the corporate side, needs to be made competitive again. You've heard that from many people. But to graphically explain to people the decisions that companies are going through as they decide whether to invest or not in America's future. Right now we have $4 trillion of cash that companies are sitting on and won't invest because of the tax code and also because of the uncertainty created by the national debt.
Let me go right there. This is an important point. Look, we interviewed Ways and Means Chairman Dave Camp, who gave it his best college try, but I think we can do better on that. In your corporate tax reform plan, you want immediate expensing of anything to do with investment. Now, I think that hits the nail on the head. For some reason, you're the only senator I've heard that really talks about that. I mean, we want to lower the rate. Why not do that? Expense everything immediately, and some sales tax that'll be more efficient in collecting revenues. To me, immediate expensing of investment would absolutely create a boom. I mean, a boom, a jobs boom. Businesses haven't spent in this whole recovery. This would create it.
Yeah, first we have to explain to people, as I try to do that, the way jobs, not just jobs, by the way, jobs is not enough. It has to be higher paying jobs, because about 43% of the jobs being created now pay $16 an hour or less. We need jobs that pay $30, $40, $50 an hour. How are those jobs created? When a company or an individual that has access to money invests it to start a new business or to grow an existing one. And we want our tax code to incentivize that. We want a tax code that says the more you invest into the economy, the more you invest back in your business, the less you have to pay Uncle Sam. And so that's what we want our tax code to reflect. And I'm not quite sure why that message is not getting through to policymakers.
I mean, President Obama, look, the guy, I don't know, he does have a version of corporate tax reform, but he goes to great lengths to penalize certain companies. He says it's a one-time transition cost, a couple of $100 billion of higher taxes. He wants to penalize companies that are operating overseas, Senator Rubio. You have a free trade component in here, which I think is exactly right. You've got a great corporate tax component. I mean, the president has the whole story wrong, does he not? And will you fight it? Up on your hind legs and just fight this thing.
Well, I think part of fighting it is to offer a clear alternative. You pointed to overseas profits for a second. We do have companies, American companies, that are manufacturing or doing business abroad. And here's what we want them to do. We want them to bring the money that they're making overseas back to the United States. But the way our tax code is now, they have to pay the taxes over there, and then if they bring it here, they got to pay the taxes again. So they're not bringing the money back. Here's the other point on free trade. We are 4% of the world's population. If we want to grow our economy, we have to improve our ability to sell products and services to all the other 96% of the people in the world. And trade barriers, other countries are doing that. If we don't do that, we're putting ourselves at a competitive disadvantage.
And speaking of high-paying jobs, okay, the Keystone Pipeline is a high-paying job. The entire energy revolution of horizontal drilling and fracking is a high-paying job. Now, we've got this crisis in Europe. Vladimir Putin has delusions of grandeur of a new Russian empire. If we can create liquid natural gas terminals, depots, and whatnot, and export all this gas shale, we can knock Putin down. Now, where's the U.S. government? We've got 6 permits. That's it. Nothing can happen, I'm told, until 2016 or 2017. Why aren't we preparing for this? Why aren't we going whole hog and sending the markets and Putin a message right now about the importance of the energy revolution and how it can help Europe and how it can stifle dictators like Putin?
Well, you've just outlined the geopolitical benefits of American energy, but there's also strong economic benefits. Here's the fundamental problem we face. In addition to impediments to actual more exploration, you've got to get it from the source that you're exploring to the export point or the distribution point. And that calls for a national network of interstate pipelines that allow us, like Keystone, to move oil or natural gas. But the permitting is so oppressive. Look, in Florida, they're trying to get a new natural gas pipeline into the state, and these companies just have to go through at least 6 different federal agencies. So I think that's one of the things we talk about in the speech is getting rid of those regulations, streamlining that process, because the exploration is fantastic, but you also have to make sure you can transport the energy in an effective, cost-effective way.
You're right. Infrastructure, the president never says that. Infrastructure should include pipeline infrastructure. It should include liquid natural gas infrastructure. You're exactly right. It's a great way to put it. All right, look, let me go to something more controversial. I believe, all right, I'm here to encourage you. Immigration reform, if done correctly, sir, is pro-growth. You started like this. I believe it takes a strong backbone to do it, and it takes leadership. Immigration reform is pro-growth, all right? We want brainiacs to come to the United States. We want the college students to stay here and help us out. We want a visa system that allows people to come back and forth. Heck, our fertility rate is going down to 2% in this country. We're going to need workers, both high-end and low-end. Senator Rubio, don't give up on immigration reform. People are whacking you. There are restrictionists in the Republican Party. You are a leader on this. Immigration reform is pro-growth.
I agree with that concept, and I think the fundamental obstruction that we faced is not on the pro-growth side of immigration reform. I think that's a majority position in America, that we have to have a legal immigration system that allows us to keep the best and brightest from our universities, that allows us to attract investors, that allows us to bring in a workforce when necessary. We are in a global competition, not just for business, but for talent. We need to win that competition. I think the impediment has to do with the illegal immigration part that needs to be addressed. And on that front, we need to do 2 things. One, we need to improve our enforcement mechanisms. We're a sovereign country, and we should be able to enforce our laws effectively. And the other is we have to address the fact that we have 12 million people in the United States living here illegally. And no one is seriously proposing that we're going to round up and deport 12 million people.
Right.
So what the debate is about is, what do you do to address those people that are here? You've got to do it in a way that's responsible, but also in a way that is realistic. And that's been the tough part, is to try to arrive at a consensus on that. What I'm arguing is, let's start doing the other things that we agree on. Because I think if we can move on the other things, like what you've outlined, the pro-growth aspects of immigration reform, it's not going to make it easy, but it's going to make it easier to deal with that other part about those who are here illegally.
I know it's a tough issue politically, and I'm not a political strategist, but I am a Marco Rubio fan. You know, sir, there's no limit to what America can do and achieve. People in this country have to be reminded of that, and people around the world have to be reminded. America has no limits. I want to end on that. Your comment.
I agree. I think our future can be brighter than our past. I think that the 21st century is tailor-made for what America is good at, innovation and job creation and investment. But we have to make a few changes if we want to fully utilize that. And I think if we make them, we're going to trigger the next American century.